Boy, is it an exciting time to be a fantasy fan right now. Hello, hello. In a previous book haul, the NYC book haul that I posted a little while back, I mentioned that I had picked up the first volume of Witch Hat Atelier. I wanted to read it before the anime was set to drop later in the year. Well, the anime has released. It dropped its first couple of episodes in April, and as of the date of filming, 9 episodes have been released, and I think there's going to be a total of 13. The reason I even bought this volume to begin with is because I've had my eye on this series for a long time, for several years, in fact. I actually went through my old Tumblr, which I don't use anymore, but I went through and searched for like any Witch Hat Atelier posts that I had reblogged, and I had like a one post with like a note that said 2023 is going to be the year that I read Witch Hat for real, for real.
A few years later.
Yeah, that didn't happen, but better late than never, as they say. The reason that this manga caught my attention initially was because I had seen just in passing a couple of different panels and like small snippets of discussions around what was being featured, the story or the writing, and it was always so highly regarded. Like some of the panels I saw were absolutely gorgeous. I really enjoyed the art style, and some of the topics that were discussed, what little I saw of the writing, I found very intriguing. And so it kind of lodged itself in the back of my head. And I was like, okay, someday I'm going to read this. The only issue is that manga and graphic novels are actually not my first choice when it comes to the medium that I enjoy the most. I actually find them a little bit overwhelming sometimes. And let me explain what I mean by that. I mentioned before that I am quite a fast reader. In fact, I sometimes do that thing where, like, if I'm so excited about what I'm reading and I'm like so eager to find out what happens next, I will accidentally spoil myself because my eyes will just start darting ahead. Whenever I'm like really, really engrossed, I'm just like going at a rapid clip. Sometimes to my detriment. Like I think there is a lot to be said for like actually taking your time to go through it. But depending on, how the plot progresses or just like how enthusiastic I am about the book, I just end up reading very quickly sometimes. But when it comes to manga and graphic novels, I feel guilty doing that. There's a legitimate form of guilt there because, I have participated in creative pursuits for my entire life. I know how much work it is to create all of these illustrations, page after page after page. And like, I feel like I owe it to the artist who worked on it to like actually take my time. And so what ends up happening, or what ended up happening in the past, at least with my experiences reading manga or reading graphic novels, is that I will like go through really quickly just to like find out what happens, and then like I will flip back and then take my time with it in order to actually properly appreciate the art, which kind of affects my momentum in a way that I don't necessarily love, because it's like either I like forcibly slow myself down and then I'm just like really anxious to find out what happens next, or I go really quickly so I know what happens next and then I have to backtrack. And anyways, it's just like it's not the most ideal reading experience for me. So yeah, there's always a certain bit of hesitation when it comes to picking up a graphic novel or picking up a manga because of this very like weird way in which I ingest this material. Despite that, I still like 9 times out of 10 really enjoy what I'm reading. And so it's not even like the manga itself or the graphic novel itself is bad. Like it is very purely like a me thing. All that's to say, it's part of the reason why it took me so long to pick up the series, even though I had an interest in it for literal years. And this past week ended up being the day that I decided to finally sit down and actually open up this first volume that I had purchased. And oh boy. Not only did I finish this in one sitting, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So the very next day, I sat down and watched 6 episodes of the anime in a row. And then the following night, I finished out the remaining 3 episodes that were out. And then I also maybe went ahead and bought the deluxe edition of the manga, which contains volumes 1 through 3. And by the way, this is just gorgeous. I love this edition so much. It's got some bonus content in the back too, and the print quality is just excellent. And yeah, I am so pleased with this purchase. You don't even know. Like, anyways, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I am eagerly awaiting volumes 4 and 5 to be ready for pickup at the library, because edition number 2 for their grimoire edition is not available until August. And so I didn't want to wait that long. And I'm like 4th in line or something for the library pickup for both of these. So I should be able to get them sooner than I can buy it. If you couldn't tell already, I fell in love with this series. And I want to talk a little bit about why this series has been one of the best new things I discovered recently, and also how the different elements of of this story and the way that it's told really come to exemplify some fantastic storytelling. If you don't know anything about Witch Hat Atelier, this series focuses on a little girl named Coco, and she, above all, loves magic. It is understood within this world that magic is something that is innate. You have to be born with it in order to be able to cast it. Or do you? One day, when a magical flying carriage ends up breaking down in her village, Coco comes into contact with a witch named Kefri, who just happened to be shopping at her mom's tailor shop when the carriage broke down. Since he's a witch, he has the ability to fix it, so he offers his help. Through this incident, Coco discovers that magic isn't actually something that you have to be born with. It's something that you can learn. All you need is a pen and some ink. And so, with a magic book that she was sold as a little girl in hand and the pen that it included, she decides to try drawing some of the spells she sees in the book herself. One of the spells ends up leading to disastrous consequences, and thus begins her adventures into the world of magic when she's taken in under Kefri's wing and begins her apprenticeship as a witch. Coco is an immediately likable protagonist and serves as a great vehicle for our perspective as an audience member. Just as she is new to the world of magic and still learning its ins and outs, so are we. She represents innocence and optimism and exudes a level of excitement and enthusiasm that feels very, very contagious. But this adventure is not without conflict, because at every turn, Coco is reminded of her status as an outsider to this world. While this wasn't always the case, after a certain inciting historic event within this fantasy world, magic has since been gatekept from the general populace. This means that only certain people had access to this knowledge, and immediately there is a class difference that is shown between those who know how to wield magic and those who don't. This series, even from the start, is not shy about exploring the exclusionary attitudes that the in-group has for the out-group, and how this affects the way that people treat Coco. So while it seems that Coco has finally reached her lifelong dream of being able to cast magic, her sudden entry into this world is not without struggle. And her status as someone who starts off on the back foot, who has a lot less knowledge than all of her peers, and who has made a terrible mistake that she's desperately now trying to correct, this dynamic affects her mental state in very real and very relatable ways. You also have a cast of very interesting characters that surround her. From Kefri, who is simultaneously a gentle, kind mentor to Coco.
I don't know anything about this man yet, but except that he's a witch. But I'm already obsessed with him. I really like his character design, and also this panel is very cool.
As well as a tortured man with his own hidden motivations that result in pretty morally gray actions, to Agat, who starts off behaving quite cruelly towards Coco and is quite unsympathetic as a character, until you learn that she is ultimately a child who is suffering from the consequences of a very difficult upbringing. This series invites you over and over again to examine what's beneath the surface, whether that's an underlying message behind certain seemingly simple conversations, or the discussion around who magic is for, who is allowed to cast it, and what the right way of doing so is, or even just the magic system itself. And speaking of the magic system, this is a brilliant system. Now, I've not made it a secret that I'm a longtime enjoyer of media that contains magic, but Witch Hat Atelier does an incredible job of utilizing a magic system that is very easy to understand and pick up, but has the potential for near infinite possibilities in terms of how it gets used. In order to cast a spell, all you need to do is draw it. The drawing consists of 3 key components: something in the center to indicate which element you want to work with, whether that's fire, water, earth, light, or wind, symbols around it that act as modifiers, and then a ring or a circle drawn around everything in order to finish off the spell and activate it. Pair that with a special type of ink, and boom, you are now able to cast magic. Of course, the effectiveness of the spell is affected by things like how well you draw it and the overall size of it. But ultimately, the types of things that you can accomplish with this magic system is limited only by your own creativity, which lends itself not only to just the utter joy of discovering how the series itself chooses to employ this magic system, but also allows you as an audience member to participate. You, just as easily as Coco or anybody else in the series, can come up with your own drawings and therefore your own spells just by following these very simple rules. And this allows you to relate to and become invested in this magic system in a way that a lot of other magic systems don't allow for, just because there's an inherent divide between those who can do magic and those who can't. So as fun as it is to imagine yourself being born differently and like just innately have the ability to shoot fireballs or, conjure magical weapons, in comparison, this magic system just feels a lot more tangible. And because it's based on drawing, it also lends itself very well to the medium of manga, because you can just sit on a page and stare at the spell that was drawn and work out how each component relates to each element or each modifier, and like actually kind of put together the pieces in your head of how the spell works and why it was drawn that way. Which brings me to my next topic, the love that this series shows towards the medium of illustration and animation. Magic isn't just drawn in the form of these spells that the witches cast, it is in the very panels themselves, because goodness, kamome shirahama sure can draw.
Like, look at this 3-panel combo where he's laying down, he's pensive, and then there's like a comical kind of jolt awake. And then I love the choice of a silhouette here. It's a pretty small moment, but it just makes it so much more atmospheric. And then like the shift in his expression here where you can like see the genuine fear, and then oh, he's pretty. This is a pretty manga.
The beautiful fantasy environments, the precise rendering of emotion on people's faces, the flowy outfits, the wonder and power of magic being cast in real time, and the creative ways in which Shirahama plays with the paneling all make for a truly rewarding experience as a reader. And then when it comes to the anime, this show is in a league of its own. The fluidity of movement, the gorgeously painted backdrops, the beautiful lighting and atmosphere, and the way that they pay homage to the manga both in terms of the covers and the panels within, while adding something totally unique to take full advantage of the medium of animation. From a visual standpoint, it is genuinely such a treat to watch, not to mention the high bar of quality that the show meets in terms of every other aspect of it. The music and sound design, the voice acting, and the way that they chose to interpret certain panels and certain scenes to really elevate it and make it take advantage of the fact that it's being animated. I'm far from the first person to say it, and I don't need to tell you this, but the world has been a lot lately. The very concept of creativity, originality, critical thinking, and even just the value of taking your time to learn a craft has been under attack by people who stand to profit worshiping at the altar of productivity and rapid execution, above all else. Which Atelier, to me, is the perfect antidote to all of that. It champions the gradual process of learning something by hand, of being passionate about a craft, having real love for something, and putting in the work in order to do it well. It exemplifies the kind of beautiful, thought-provoking art that can be created when people who genuinely care, who think deeply, who have something to say, work hard to make it happen. As someone who works in the creative industry and has watched this industry get absolutely decimated in recent years, the series reminded me of the joy of creation and the magic that this can bring to people's lives. From an earnest protagonist who finds the world of magic wondrous and isn't afraid to show it, to the explorations of morality and class and its refusal to give easy answers about what is right and what is wrong, this series is a tether back to the very things that make us human, just presented within a really fun fantasy setting. I'm so excited to dive more into the series, and from what I've heard, and I am trying very hard to avoid actual spoilers for the rest of the manga, the series just gets more and more interesting and complex and explores these topics more deeply as it continues. There are currently 14 volumes out in English, and you bet that I will be making my way through them as fast as my library will allow me to. Let me know if you want me to make some more videos on Witch Hat Atelier specifically as I read through these. If not, then I will certainly be covering them in my usual wrap-ups. Honestly, before I even picked up the first volume, the many years prior in which I had this in the back of my mind, from what I saw, I knew I was going to like it, and I'm so happy to be proven right. I wish I hadn't taken this long. I don't know what I was waiting for, but if anything I've said today has piqued your interest, run, don't walk. Whether that's reading the manga or watching the anime, both have something very unique to offer, and I think both are 100% worth it, even if you've already know the story going into one or the other. But if you're drawn to one medium over the other for whatever reason, then just go and experience the story that way. I don't care which one you choose, it's going to be a good time either way, so just pick one and go. And let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching me gush about this series for however long this video ends up being. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you're interested in hearing more from me, then feel free to hit that subscribe button, and catch you later. Bye. I just realized, watching back some of the footage, that my hair is pretty agate coated today. Okay. I didn't do that on purpose, by the way.